I used to believe that being forgotten was quieter than being rejected. I'm not sure that's true anymore. The notification didn't come from them. It was Marissa's name that showed up on my screen, a forwarded photo of a group chat banner, Sunday dinner at Carol's. "Bring your +1s," the caption beneath it read. "Thought you'd want to know. Not sure why you're not in the thread." I stared at the image for a while. The font was small. The background was soft pink. Someone had added a cake emoji. I wasn't in the group, but they hadn't changed the name. Whittaker Family Chat. My name had been in it once. I scrolled back through old texts, looking for any message I might have missed. There was nothing but silence. Then I pressed the contact I still had saved under Carol Thomas's mom, and waited. You don't need to come anymore. Not a question. Not a conversation. Thomas needs clarity. We all do. I don't remember what I replied, maybe nothing. I tapped to hang up and set the phone face down on the counter. The screen flickered once, then went black. On the fridge, the magnet holding up the old grocery list wobbled slightly as I brushed past it. I kept forgetting to take down the note that said, "Buy decaf for Mom." I hadn't bought it. No one had visited in weeks. They didn't need to slam any doors. They just stopped asking me to step inside. I stood in the kitchen with one hand resting on the chipped ceramic mug from our first trip to Vermont. The one with the pine trees that faded in the dishwasher. It still held 2 pens, a button, and the spare key to a cabin I wasn't invited to anymore. They never used words like divorce or separation, just phrases wrapped in clean linen. It's better if you take some space. He needs room to breathe. Let's not make this harder than it already is. I ran my thumb over the edge of my wedding band, still on though loose now. It spun a little on colder mornings. Lately, I stopped noticing when it did. No one told me I had been replaced. That's not how they operate. It happens in calendar events, seating arrangements, group texts, where your name disappears without being deleted. Later that night, I muted the group thread, not because it hurt, but because it was time, and silence when chosen sounds very different. I used to believe that understanding someone meant making yourself smaller. I remembered folding the green cardigan over the back of the dining chair, smoothing it twice before sitting down. Carol had made her lemon roast again. She always did when company came. I brought a pie still warm and placed it gently at the edge of the table. I thought Evelyn could bring dessert. Thomas had mentioned not looking at me. Carol didn't glance up when she replied, "Well, I suppose that works if the bakery is closed." I didn't correct her. I just kept my hands in my lap and smiled when she passed the potatoes. Later that night, I wiped the pie plate clean and set it back in the car without a word. I never brought pie again. At the cabin, Thomas liked silence. He said it helped his ideas breathe. I would stack firewood, sweep dust from windowsills, refill the kettle without being asked. He once handed me a roll of tape and said, "Could you label the boxes? Your handwriting is softer." Softer, like it was something to wrap around the sharp edges of his life. He didn't like clutter, especially emotional clutter. I learned not to mention the fertility pills, not to bring up the appointment dates unless he asked. He rarely did. "I just need time to focus on this project," he'd mutter, eyes on the floor plans. I nodded and reminded myself that timing was everything. After the board dinner last winter, I found out I hadn't been included. It wasn't an oversight. When I asked, Thomas didn't hesitate. "It's easier when I don't have to explain you to them." That's when I realized I had become something that needed explaining. I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror that night, the soft navy blouse I had chosen carefully, the earrings Carol once called too modest, the lipstick one shade too pale. I told myself it wasn't about them. It was about Peace. You're not like the rest of us, Carol once told me in the kitchen, handing me a towel. And that's fine. Some people are meant to watch the room, not belong in it. I dried the teacup and said nothing. Somewhere along the way, I began thinking that quiet could be currency, that if I gave enough of it, I might be let back inside. But silence, when used like that, doesn't buy love. It only pays for erasure. I never thought absence could happen while you were still in the room. At Carol's birthday dinner, they had arranged everything down to the name cards and printed menus. Each daughter-in-law stood to give a short toast, some red notes, others improvised. I stayed seated, my glass untouched. Toward the end, Carol gestured vaguely across the table. And Thomas's wife, Evelyn. She's quiet, but nice. No one looked over. The waiter began clearing plates before I could smile. Later that night, I folded the linen napkin into a triangle, tucked it under my plate, and left it there. No one noticed. There was a community award once. A small thing, nothing grand, just a plaque for a public project I had helped design. When the topic of work came up over dinner, Thomas leaned back and waved his hand. She keeps things running. Great with lists. Someone laughed, someone else nodded. I looked down at the little gold pin still fastened on my cardigan. He had watched me attach it in the car. That photograph at the cabin, the one framed near the stairs, was mine. I had taken it at the end of a long hike. The light had been right, soft and low. Thomas was adjusting the tripod. She was laughing behind him. I remember lifting the camera, thinking I would capture a memory for them both. No one asked who took it. The frame listed only one caption: Lakeview, Retreat, Summer. My name wasn't needed. I once left a small note tucked inside Carol's birthday card. Just one line. Thank you for letting me belong. She never mentioned it. A week later, I found it still folded, unopened, wedged between wrapping paper and receipts in the hallway trash. During a dinner last fall, Thomas's uncle turned to me with a polite smile. I'm sorry. I forget. Are you still doing that little decorating thing? I nodded. He patted my hand once like someone rewarding a child. At some point, I stopped correcting them. I stopped offering. There's a difference between being overlooked and being erased, but when it happens long enough, you begin to lose the shape of your own outline. I think that's when I started holding my breath in rooms with my name on the envelope, but not on the seat. I used to think betrayal came with a noise, raised voices, broken plates, a slammed door. I was wrong. Sometimes it arrives folded neatly on a kitchen counter. The woman at the cabin wore linen. Her voice carried that soft, curated tone people reserve for polite strangers. She tilted her head when she saw me. Oh, you must be the neighbor. Thomas said someone might drop by to check the chimney. I looked at the planter near the steps, the one I painted myself 2 summers ago, now filled with artificial lavender. Inside, the walls had been rearranged, not torn down, just gently shifted. The woven throw I bought in Santa Fe was missing. The brass lamp I rewired alone now stood in the wrong corner, with a new shade patterned and loud. On the console table, next to a dish of dried oranges, sat a folder, open. Pages clipped neatly, her name printed in sharp black letters, Sabrina Ellis followed by Thomas's in his usual rushed signature. The word lease appeared 3 times in the first paragraph. I rested my hand on the back of the chair I once reupholstered. The fabric was new cream, stiff, not broken in yet. She walked toward this kitchen without looking back. Her heels didn't make much sound on the wood. Before disappearing around the corner, she glanced over her shoulder. Let me know if you want a drink. I've got rosé in the fridge. On the bookshelf, I spotted the hollow ceramic bowl I made in that weekend class, now holding lemons that didn't look real. There were no photos of me, not even in the background, not even half-cropped by accident. He hadn't erased me. He had overwritten. I didn't speak. I didn't sit. I didn't reach for anything, not even the coffee cup near the sink that looked exactly like the one he'd bought me years ago. I wasn't sure if it was mine or just something that resembled what I had once touched. Somewhere behind me, glass clinked. Maybe he thought I wouldn't come back. Maybe he counted on it. The lease didn't hurt. Not the paper, not the ink. What did was the realization that I had been filed under previous. A label peeled off slowly, cleanly, without residue. And that's what made it permanent. I always thought leaving would feel like slamming something. The suitcases came down from the attic. I wiped the dust off the handles with the hem of an old college sweatshirt I hadn't worn in years, the one with the frayed sleeve and the faded letters. He used to call it my "you don't need to impress" anyone sweater. I wore it anyway. Each item I folded had a place. The cufflinks he never used. The sweater his mother gave him that still smelled like cedar. The shaving kit I once bought for our anniversary never opened. I didn't rush. 3 suitcases all zipped clean. Nothing broken, nothing cut. Just absence arranged. I placed the keys on the entryway table. No note, no envelope. Just metal on wood. Later, I sat at the kitchen counter with the phone resting beside the unpaid utility bills. I dialed the number from memory, though I had only used it once. Diane Rivers, divorce attorney. No hesitation. Just a voice on the other end saying, "Tell me what you're asking for." I traced the rim of the coffee mug beside me. The inside was stained, the handle chipped. No contest. "I don't want anything. Just time." She didn't ask why. I took only what I could carry, 1 lamp, a skillet, 2 books with underlined passages, and the ceramic bowl I'd cracked and glued back together myself. A few clothes, a photo of my parents on their porch, smiling at something behind the camera. I rented a small place with yellowing blinds and a crooked door frame. No one helped me move. No one stopped me. Carol once told me while stirring a pot of soup at her stove, "Some people don't fit because they keep looking for doors where there are only walls." I'd smiled then. I didn't now. There were no announcements, no final arguments, no begging. Just a house still warm from the inside, and a door I closed without sound. I didn't check the lock. Some exits don't need permission, only a decision. I didn't expect quiet to feel so heavy at first. The walls in the apartment echoed differently. There was a slight hollowness when I set a mug down, like the space was still adjusting to being lived in again. The light bulbs flickered once before settling. I didn't replace them. The old dresser drawer stuck the same way it always had, pull then lift slightly. The top held only a coaster and a chipped jewelry dish now empty. I used to keep earrings in it, the ones I wore to family events, small and neutral. On my second day there, I unpacked the box labeled loose items and found a wrinkled envelope addressed to my maiden name. Inside was a handwritten invoice from years ago, Emily Grant's cafe remodel. She had scribbled, "You gave this place breath." I emailed her that night. She replied in less than an hour. "Still the best layout we've had. I've got a new space if you're taking clients." I told her I was available. No story, no context. In the mornings I boiled water and used the last of the mint leaves from a tin I'd nearly thrown away. I drank slowly, standing at the window. Across the street, a dry cleaner opened at 7. The man who ran it swept the sidewalk twice, even when there were no leaves. No one texted. No calendar alerts popped up. The silence no longer pressed against my ribs. It just sat there, patient. I bought a small cactus from the corner shop. The tag said it needed very little to live. I named it Hope, not as a metaphor, but because the name felt unfinished. That seemed right. The first check I received from Emily's project arrived with a handwritten note. You still make spaces feel like home. I folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer with the jewelry dish. I didn't wear the ring anymore, but I hadn't thrown it out either. I kept it with the things that once meant permanence. Carol once leaned across the table and told me, "You always seemed like someone who was just visiting." I didn't respond then. I don't think I could have. Now I think maybe she was right. Maybe I had been passing through the wrong rooms all along. I don't think they ever missed me, only the shape I used to fill. The voicemail came in during lunch. The name blinked once across my screen before fading. I let it sit for hours before listening. The voice was careful, measured, almost warm. "We're putting together a family album for the foundation gala. Historical moments, milestones. You and Thomas were part of that chapter. It would look better if you're included. Not right, better." I didn't call back right away. I took my time folding a towel matching the edges of a pillowcase, pouring the rest of my tea down the sink. Then I dialed. "Are you asking because you miss me or because people are asking questions?" The silence on the other end wasn't confusion. It was calculation. I ended the call before she could decide how to respond. That evening my inbox held a new message. His name was still there in the same serif font I used to scroll past when we shared a life. "Can we talk? I miss the calm you brought. Sabrina isn't handling the cabin the same way." I stared at the screen for a moment longer than I meant to. Then I typed one line. "Hire a property manager." I didn't add a sign-off. There's a quiet that follows absence. At first they treat it like an error, then like a problem. Eventually they treat it like a threat. Carol once told me during a fundraiser brunch while slicing into a dry scone, "Photos without context are easier for people to digest." She was referring to a cousin's elopement. Now, I wonder if she meant all of us. The framed picture that hung in the dining room had been replaced. A new image Thomas at the same table, same chair, surrounded by different faces, same composition, new story. I received a printed invite weeks later. White cardstock, gilded corners, my name nowhere on it. But inside, tucked in the RSVP envelope, was a note in familiar handwriting. "People keep asking about you." That's all it said. Not, "How are you?" Not, "We miss you." Not even "Come back." Just a reminder that my presence had once served a purpose, and now my absence had created an inconvenience. I folded the note and placed it between two receipts in a drawer I rarely opened. Not because it mattered, but because I wanted to remember what silence costs when it no longer serves them. I used to fill silence with usefulness, like if I stayed busy enough, I wouldn't be forgotten. Now, I measure time in smaller rituals. I light the same candle each morning, just enough to scent the room with bergamot and something faintly earthy. I open the window halfway, never all the way. I like hearing the world, but only from a distance. The sketches I draw these days aren't for approval. No one's waiting to frame them or suggest revisions. They live on loose paper, thumbtacked to the wall above my desk. A small corner of the room holds a stool and a box of pastels I haven't used since college. I saw Marissa outside the co-op grocery store, arms full of kale and almond milk. She blinked twice before stepping closer. "You seem lighter." I smiled without explanation, because I stopped being what they needed. She didn't ask who they were. Maybe she already knew. I replaced the blinds in my apartment, swapped the hardware on the cabinets, painted one wall a deep green that made the whole room feel slower. A neighbor passed by once while I was painting the baseboard and asked if I was expecting company. No, just clarity. The plant on my windowsill has grown taller. It leans a little toward the east. I haven't repotted it. Not yet. At the used bookstore off Bell Street, I was thumbing through a worn copy of a design journal when a voice from behind said, "Funny seeing you here." I turned. Henry Lawson. His beard a little fuller, his shirt still creased like he'd just left a meeting. He reached for the same book I held and paused. "I always thought you were too strong to stay invisible." I didn't respond. I just handed him the book. He flipped through a few pages, then looked at me like I had rearranged the room without touching anything. Carol used to call me manageable, not kind, not clever, not even capable, just manageable. A word meant for drawers and linen sets, something to be stored, not seen. Now I keep a hook by the door where I hang my own coat. The weight of it doesn't pull the rack down anymore. It just sits there balanced, exactly as I am. I used to believe closure came with a conversation. Now I think it comes with a signature and the sound of your own breath, steady and uninterrupted. The forms arrived in a manila envelope, corners slightly bent. I didn't open them right away. I placed them on the counter beside a chipped bowl of oranges and let them sit until the light shifted across the tile. When I finally reached for a pen, the ink flowed clean. No hesitation. Mutual consent. No revisions needed. I slipped the pages back into the envelope and sealed it with one slow press of my palm. It didn't feel final, but it felt done. Later that week I found the wedding album in the bottom of a drawer I no longer opened. The leather cover had warped slightly at the edge, the way things do when they've absorbed too much time. I wiped it with my sleeve and packed it into a box. No ribbon, no wrapping. I taped a note to the lid. "This belongs to a past I've archived." The mailing label bore my handwriting, unchanged, legible, unadorned. The cabin sold quickly. A young couple, hopeful and polite, sent a thank you card with a photo of their daughter on the porch steps. She was holding a mason jar of wildflowers. There was a red raincoat draped over the railing. I placed the photo in the kitchen drawer beneath a stack of old instruction manuals. I didn't keep it for memory. I kept it as proof that something could outgrow its beginning. At the courthouse, I waited in line to update my legal name. The clerk asked, "Returning to your maiden name?" I nodded. "Evelyn Morgan," she repeated, typing without pause. "Sounds like someone who's clear about things." I didn't reply. I watched her staple the paperwork together and hand it over like any other errand. No one called that day. No one needed anything. Thomas once told me while adjusting a tie before a charity dinner, "You're the kind of woman people don't notice until you're not there." He meant it as praise. I heard it for what it was. Now when I sign my name on documents or emails, I pause between the first and last, not out of uncertainty, but because I earned the space in between. I don't measure peace in volume anymore. The kettle whistled low before I turned the heat down. The steam curled upward like breath meeting cold air. I poured slowly, letting the liquid rest in the cup before lifting it. The tea leaves were from a small tin bought on a whim during a weekend I never planned to mention again. The flavor wasn't sweet. It lingered sharp at first, then quiet. I opened the window halfway. The frame stuck for a moment, then gave. The air outside held the edge of something turning. Leaves not yet fallen, but not fully green either. I sat in the chair. I refinished myself, the one with the uneven leg. I stopped trying to fix. The book in front of me wasn't new. The spine cracked faintly when I bent it open. I didn't read. I just liked the weight of it in my hand. Some mornings I moved the bookmark out of habit, though I rarely turned a page. On the table sat a photo tucked into a frame made of pale wood. The image was soft, unfocused. I stood alone at the top of a ridge, hair lifted by windcoat unbuttoned. I'd taken it with a timer propped against a rock, unsure if it would capture anything at all. No one called. No reminders blinked from my screen. The inbox held only receipts and auto-renewals. I didn't check the time. There was once a woman at a family brunch who turned to me, napkin folded neatly in her lap, and said, "You always seem content with so little. Some people are just small that way." She didn't say it to hurt. She said it because she believed it. I stirred the sugar into my tea and nodded as if it were true. I haven't thought of her voice in weeks, but today the sound returned muffled and far away, like hearing footsteps from the floor below. I watched the steam from the cup disappear. Then I wrapped both hands around the porcelain and let the warmth settle into my palms. The silence didn't press anymore. It expanded. I didn't need it to be meaningful. I didn't need to explain it. I only needed to sit with it without proof, without performance, and breathe.